Imagine that you're hanging out with a couple of guys that you've known since kindergarten. And by the time you're 21, you start a band. Now imagine that after less than 6 weeks together, you come up with and record a song that completely defines an entire genre and winds up influencing music and culture for the next 42 years. And imagine that after only 4 years, you put out 4 albums that cement your place in history as one of the most influential bands of the 1980s. But then 2 years after that band breaks up, you and at least two of the other three guys, the ones you've known since kindergarten, form a different band and enjoy the greatest commercial success of your career for the next 14 years. That's the condensed version of the musical career of Daniel Ash, who in 1978 released the 9-minute long anthem Bela Lugosi's Dead with Kevin and David Haskins and lead singer Peter Murphy as the band Bauhaus, who, rightly or wrongly, have been labeled as the godfathers of goth. While nobody in the band is completely comfortable with that title, there's no question that the band still has a profoundly looming impact that still resonates and influences music and culture today. That same band, minus Peter Murphy, would later become Tones on Tail, and then they would become Love and Rockets, who would continue to thrive in front of an even bigger audience with hits like So Alive and No New Tale to Tell, and several others. In 2019, all four original members of Bauhaus reformed and hoped to spend most of last year touring the world. Those plans were, of course, interrupted due to the pandemic, but in the meantime, Daniel Ash kept busy with a brand new band and a brand new record. And he's going to tell you all about that and a whole lot more. This is not only my conversation with the legendary Daniel Ash, this is Daniel's very first podcast interview ever. Pretty damn exciting show on Baxi's Musical Podcast.
It's Baxi's Musical Podcast.
I can't believe this is the first podcast interview you've ever done.
Yeah. I'm not really big on all this social media stuff. I just like to run away on my motorcycle most of the time. So, but got this album coming out, so I got to start promoting it.
Well,
so I appreciate the plug.
Hey, I appreciate you allowing me to help you bulldoze into the 21st century.
Yeah, well, it's crazy out there. It's crazy. I don't know when the beginning of the end of all this shit's going to happen, but I knew when it first started, to be honest. I had a hunch that this would happen. I had friends saying, nah, it's nothing, and it's obviously not turned out that way.
And then here we are almost a year into it, and we're still dealing with it. Hopefully things will start turning around soon, I hope. So you hinted just a second ago, I know you had a big announcement to make. Tell me what's going on.
Well, it's not a big announcement yet because I haven't finished it, but I've been working on an album with Paul Denman from Sade, bass playing Sade, and Bruce Smith, drummer in Pill. It's a project that we started about 18 months ago. And we're finally, Bruce lives in New York. Well, he lives on the East Coast, and then Paul's in L.A., and I'm about 100 miles from him. So getting together, especially now, has been, real difficult. It hasn't really happened. We've had to use, telephones and God, that sounds old-fashioned, doesn't it? We've had to text each other and email and stuff like that, and telephone, just sending files to each other to do our bit. And it didn't start out that way. We were actually in the studio, 18 months ago,
right,
on and off through the year. And then as it's carried on, we've been working separately and sending each other the parts and building. I think we've probably got about 15 tracks now, so we're going to pick the best and put out an album. It's called Ashes and Diamonds is the name of the band. It's myself, Paul, and Bruce, 3-piece, and I must say it is working out really well. I mean, we've had time to really craft the songs and get them produced, really, as good as possible, because I really hate underproduction unless it's the Velvet Underground, of course, but generally I'm into I really like to fine-tune the production of things as far as the songs go.
It sounds like that's what a lot of people are doing now when they're working on projects. Obviously, because everyone's got a distance, and you've got people living in different parts of the country or different parts of the world. A lot of people are doing it piece by piece, sending files and putting it together on their computer.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny. I think that there's going to be an absolute glut of music after when everything starts to ease up. I think there's going to be so many albums out there because, you've certainly had time to be at home and write songs and stuff like that.
Right.
So I think there's going to be a saturation of stuff from musicians, basically.
Do you have like a timetable of when the Ashes and Diamonds record would be out?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've got to find out how to promote this and sell it and all the rest of it when it's done. We're on the last. We've got 2 more mixes to do, and we've got this whiz kid on the East Coast in New York called Scotty Hardman, who's been. We're sending the tracks to him, and then he puts his magic on it and just makes it sound like a record, if you know what I mean. He's like, I have never met the guy. I don't even know what he looks like, but we've been talking and we give the tracks to him, and he's been doing some great mixing. So. Given it a youthful injection, which is great. And then I've got to mention James Salter, who's the guy that actually put all this together. It's a friend of mine. He's a fellow motorcycle rider. And we're friends for quite a few years. And he managed to get us a publishing deal and all the rest of it. And also he's been co-producing on various tracks on this thing. So, this is 18 months worth. So when the last, I'm hoping that we're going to actually have the last mix. We've got 2 more to go. Should be done by the end of February. And then it's a matter of finding out how to promote it and get it out there, because obviously we're not going to be doing gigs anytime soon. But, there obviously now there's other avenues, there's other ways of getting it out there. So, we can't wait actually to get some sort of feedback, because, you can go on and on and on and on. This has been 18 months, and it's like there's a point where you really need to get some feedback public out there. So, 2 months, I'm hoping.
So as a guy who is not always satisfied to be repeating himself and to do the same thing over and over again, I mean, how would you describe this record? Is it very different from what you've done before, or are there some similarities between this and Love and Rockets?
There's going to be some similarities, because I'm doing the words and stuff, and I'm doing vocals, so that there's going to be similarities there. Subject matter, it's all over the place. I mean, this is a real cliche, but there's a song about 2020, and it's a really, really sad song. I mean, I can't listen to it at the moment; it's too sad.
Right.
It's just a real downer. But we're tweaking the music so that it's not a downer, to have a juxtaposition there within the song. Because if you have the lyrics and the music down, it doesn't work. It goes too. Nobody wants to hear it because it's too depressing. So I want to get some music amped up on that particular track. But then there's another song which is completely optimistic, which, funnily enough, was written in the same week, so it's quite schizophrenic. But the difference with this is, again, I'm working with completely new people. So the way Paul plays bass and the way Bruce plays drums is very different from who I've worked with before. So it's intentional to work with new people to do something fresh, plus a new name for the band. It's just fresh blood. Well, I'm hoping that it's going to be that it is going to be perceived as something different again, rather than I mean, I hate repeating myself, and I like to sort of switch it up. That's for the public to decide. We'll see.
I mean, when you talk about playing with the same people over and over again, I mean, you've known the Haskins brothers since you were children. I mean, to have played together musically for that long with those 2 guys. I would assume that you're more than happy to start playing with somebody new, just to get new ideas and new blood in there.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, it has been a long time. I mean, I knew David and Kevin from art school, and I knew Peter from school from like 12 years old. So, mind you, we've all done projects in between that setup or those setups. So, but yeah, this is totally new because I've never worked with these guys before. But I know Paul Demon from his wife, Kim, because she was at art school, same time as me. She was in the fashion department at art school. So I know her from way back from 18 years old. Wow. And then obviously I met Paul when they moved to LA many years ago. So I know Paul to a degree, but not in a working capacity.
So I want to ask you this, and I'm totally curious about what your answer would be. Although I have a pretty good idea of where you would go with it. This whole Godfather of Goth thing, aren't you a little sick of that shit by now?
I don't listen to it. It's something Susie Sue said years ago, which I tend to agree with. It's sort of funny. But she said goth doesn't exist. And I'm like, yeah, I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
It's just a funny way of dealing with it.
It's
because, way back, if you called Susie and the Banshees goth or the Cure goth, it was an insult. But I've repeated myself too many times about this whole thing. But yeah, the bottom line is I don't listen to it. I don't look at that stuff and all those labels. I mean, again, that's another cliche, me even saying that, but
no,
way over that.
But you know what? I get it because, you think about, there's always been a desire to classify everything.
Yeah, well, I see the necessity in it to a degree. You got to put it in some box. Well, you needed to in the past, not so much now, because everything crosses over with everything else. You can use all the, going way back, Brian Eno did that with Here Come the Warm Jets. He was using different musical styles in that album to great effect.
Yeah.
And I know that's 1972, but it's the first thing that come off the top of my head as a good example of really mixing it up, different musical styles. That album is genius because of that.
Yeah. When I think of the term goth rock, or however you want to describe it, I also think in the same terms of like krautrock, which to me is like a totally dismissive way of explaining or classifying a ton of great music that had nothing to do with anything, including all those other bands that were lumped together in that classification. It was just like a weird way of covering it all with a big giant blanket.
Yeah, well, they're just in the little aisles in the old days, you had to put things in, and record stores,
Right.
You had to put things in categories. So that's what it was used for. That I get that side of it.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between anything I've been involved with and say heavy metal. Thank God. But I'm just saying, it's a category of music. But with the goth thing, it's perceived. I don't know if it is now, but it was definitely perceived very different in America to the UK. But I don't really want to delve into that and start naming all these different bands because I've done it so many times before. It's real boring. But, I get it. I get why there was that somebody named it that.
Right.
Just like somebody punk, etc.
Exactly.
Got also prog rock and blah, blah, blah. I get it. I just think we were more than that. That's all. But I think all musicians say that as a cliche in itself.
Yeah, but I think you're right. Bauhaus was more than that. Love and Rockets was certainly more than that. And in fact, I remember back when I was in college, this would have been 1985, 1986. I saw Love and Rockets play in Milwaukee. And the thing that I remember most about the show is that there was just a sea of guys trying really hard to look just like Daniel Ash. And very, very, very few of them were able to pull that off. The way the bands have sounded, the way you guys look, it was all very important to both of those bands. Whether or not how you guys looked was intentional, it meant something to a lot of people back in the late 70s, and certainly as you were moving a little bit further up into the 80s.
Yeah, well, what occurs to me right there is just how influenced I was from David Bowie in particular, obviously. Peter and myself at school were obsessed. We had a strict diet of Bowie, T-Rex and Roxy Music and Iggy and the Stooges. Well, actually, not so much the Stooges, but Iggy. Lust for Life and The Idiot. That's all we listen to.
Yeah.
Some things haven't changed, actually.
So
I still listen to that. I was just listening to Raw Power the other day, and just how incredible that song is, and it is exactly the same as riding a motorcycle for me. So
yeah.
it just says that completely. It's that thing. So, but yeah, going back to the gigs back then. If you think about it, I don't think Love and Rockets weren't anything to do with goth at all. I don't think you could even put them in that category. And then the other one, actually, which is my favorite, I think, is Tones on Tail, which nobody talks about, which is a bummer because I think we were really breaking new ground with that. If you listen to that stuff now, it sounds like it could have been recorded last week because it's not in any category at all. What I'm very proud of with that band, it sounds like it's from another planet, and that, for me, I achieved what I wanted to achieve because it really does sound otherworldly.
I think when you used to hear, Go in the clubs, and you'd see how it would just react, how people would react to it, start dancing to that song.
Absolutely. 20 years, 30 years on as well, incredible. And what is very funny for me, because I remember it came on in a nightclub when I was in the Pyramid Club, I think, in New York, quite a while back. Anyway, and it came on. Everybody went ballistic, and I'm thinking, if only these people knew how that was made in this tiny little humble studio on the outskirts of Northampton, a place called Wellingborough, Beck Studios. It's a really humble little 16-track studio, analog, and it makes me giggle when I think of how that was recorded. And it's a super cool track. And people still love it. It's great. I mean, I'm very chuffed with that. Obviously, I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, and you should be. Like I said, that is like one of those songs that came out. It for many people, they may not know about Tones on Tail, but I missed seeing Tones on Tail like by 2 years. Again, when I was in college, I think you guys played a show in Chicago, and then 2 years later, you're playing, as Love and Rockets, but that was a song that we were playing on college radio all the time because it has such a great, exhilarating groove to it. It is a classic.
Yeah, it is. I'm very proud of that. I'm sure the other guys are as well, Glenn and Kevin. Absolutely.
I do want to ask you something because to me, when you go back to the beginning of Bauhaus, what is remarkable to me, because every time I've read it, I'm going, how is that even possible? The stories that as I understand it, is you guys were a band for just a handful of weeks before you go into a studio and record Bela Lugosi's Dead. You're 21 years old. You're children at that point. You create this 9-minute opus. I mean, there's really no other way to describe it. After only a couple weeks, when most people start bands at 21, they're still trying to figure out how to work out, Stairway to Heaven in their parents' basement. But you guys were able to put something together that was remarkable. How did that happen in such a short period of time?
That band is incredibly speedy. I mean, we did work when the four of us got together. It was it's a situation where you'd have an idea, and if they didn't like it, if we didn't like it, it'd be no, that's no good. Next, within moments. So, but with Bella, it was a magical moment. We've been together 2 or 3 weeks, and I don't think I need to tell the story on really how it all happened because I've said that so many times. But,
right.
The main thing with Bauhaus is everything. Your idea wasn't any good. We moved on to the next idea within 30 seconds to a minute. It was so instant, and we were all really impatient. And I remember us we wanted to get there real quick. And, we wanted to get to playing gigs in London immediately, not dick around playing gigs in the pub in your hometown for 6 years before you start to think about doing a gig in London. We were doing gigs in London, I think, within a month anyway. Very soon, real quick anyway. But the whole vibe of that band is we're very impatient. And this is funny, but I remember us thinking, my God, we're going to be 22. We better get on, otherwise we're going to be over the hill. We actually thought, I remember thinking to myself, we've got to get a move on here because the Sex Pistols have been on top of the Pops already, and they're 21. We haven't done that. We got to get moving, otherwise it's going to be over. I mean, we worked real quick. It was just ideas were bouncing off each other. It was just fast.
That is amazing to me.
About 3-4 weeks, we booked the studio because we knew that we had something. And the funny thing is, when we were in the rehearsal room, we just started playing it. And that was what you hear on the record. It was a weird, magical moment.
Amazing.
It was literally that quick. It was just, we pretty much played the song as you hear it. That's my memory of it anyway. So we were like, all right, let's phone Beck. Get into the studio now, as soon as possible. Let's get this down while it's fresh.
So in 2019, there was a brief Bauhaus reunion. And I know there were only a handful of shows. I think there were a couple in Los Angeles.
Brief.
Yeah,
3 gigs.
Yeah, real brief. And I heard that there were more.
We were fast.
I mean, I know there were more dates booked. Is there any plan to resume that, or is that kind of a done thing?
We were supposed to play all around the world this year, 2020. We were supposed to. It was all booked. We were, doing several gigs, festivals, etc., and everything's cancelled. But there's definitely plans when all this lifts. I don't think it's going to be till next year now, the way things are looking. If we're lucky, it'll be next year. But yeah, there's definitely plans to carry on.
Good. So as far as how you're getting along with the other guys, I mean, again, I know you've had a long-standing working relationship with the Haskins brothers, but with Peter, I know there have been issues over the years. Has time resolved some of those issues, or is it just, or are you just forging ahead?
Well, this is the deal. We're all, I was laughing with Kevin months ago about this. I said, you know what? Because obviously we exchanged texts and emails. We have to because of business. And I was having a laugh with Kevin about this. I said, none of us have changed at all. We're exactly the same. And that's pretty much it. And we get on and we don't get on, and we get on and we don't get on. It's okay. It's doable because we're older now. So it's not a big deal. It carries on. It's funny because I'm saying this now and we might all fall out again in about 36 hours. I don't know. But it's definitely easier when you get older, because plus we don't live in the same town and we don't see each other all the time. We're all like thousands of miles away from each other. So, or hundreds of miles at least. So it's doable. We're going to carry on doing gigs. We plan on doing next year what we were going to do.
I read an interview with David talking about how the last reunion ended as quick as it started, and it's very much like you talk about. Even in the beginning, Bauhaus, very quick band. It's like the song is done, you move on. The tour is on, it tours off.
Well, there you see, we've just done it again because we played 3 gigs before Christmas in 2019, and now, boom. Flash, gone. When are they coming back? None of us know. We'll see what happens as far as the pandemic goes, because that's holding us back.
So Love and Rockets was together for 14 years. It's first time around before you had a reunion a couple of years later. But that's, and again, you've known the Haskins forever. There's always this Bauhaus shadow. I mean, there's always, you've always being compared from one thing to another. And even with a new record, down the road, do you still worry about, am I just going to be overshadowed by the same old thing, even though I'm looking to do new things all the time? Is that a concern for you?
No, I don't worry about that at all. I don't care about it being compared because it's completely different. What I don't worry about it, but what I'm hoping is that, what's happening right now, with Ashes and Diamonds, this new band, is that it's going to have a degree of success, because if it doesn't, I'm out of there in a New York second. It's got to be, if it's not doing anything, I'm done.
Right.
And that's how it's been with everything, with all the bands, and going back to Bauhaus, Love and Rockets, Stones on Tail, there's different personalities. The bands are very different from each other with give or take a member, because basically it's been the same 4 people, if you think about it, over the years in different formats. And it has its moment, and then you move on. But none of us are the sort of people that want to hang around and drag it out.
Right.
And funny enough, when you said about Love and Rockets being together 14 years, I think all in all, that band was together 17 years, which actually I think is a bit of a miracle, considering our personalities, the fact that we could go on that long. But, we had our own lives outside of the band as well, and our own projects. But again, that's a long time to be in the same band. But when you get the 4 of us together, that's volatile. That's something else. That's why we're quick.
Yeah,
we're quick to start and quick to finish. Yeah.
I've been a big fan of Love and Rockets, since the very beginning, and like I said, having seen you guys in the 80s, I bought the first album and kept buying the albums as they went along, but. One of the albums that may not get the credit that it probably deserves, and I know there's actually quite a story to it, is the Sweet F.A. album. And I know that there had been a fire and things were destroyed and there were lawsuits because of that. What did happen with that record and with the fire? What was that all about?
Well, we were having to scramble because I think halfway through making the record, the record company we were with disintegrated. So that wasn't too good. I remember getting a phone call from Dave saying, hey, we don't have a record company anymore. I have a memory of that. And we have no money. That was a great little message to us as well. And so we were scrambling, and we were basically putting that album together in Friends Studios in L.A. That's how we were having to do it on a shoestring budget. And the fire thing, that was, we had a friend over, we had a guy over called, Genesis P. Orridge, who recently passed away from Throbbing Gristle. You know that guy?
I do, yep.
Anyway, he was staying at the place, and somebody had put a whammy on him. fire. There was a fire. He did a gig in L.A. We went to the show. He comes back to the house. He was unconscious because he'd ingested something. We never found out what, but anyway, he was out. And when he was back at the house that we were staying at, and somebody found what's called a fire doll. It's a whammy that through voodoo that somebody put on him, and basically it creates fire. And that night, we all went to bed, whatever, we were jamming. We had a little rehearsal space there. It's the same place where the Chili Peppers were staying before that. And the next morning at 7 a.m, the whole house, starting from the room that we're in, was up in flames. And his assistant, Genesis' assistant, came banging on our doors saying, fire, fire, and to get out. And I remember jumping out of the bedroom window 2 stories up,
Wow.
to the ground, and the place was ablaze. That's what happened that night. So whether it was the whammy or that's a coincidence or whatever, but it certainly happened, and all our gear was destroyed, everything.
Were tapes destroyed too?
No, not really. No. This was a rehearsal studio. It wasn't recording. We were just rehearsing in the house. It was Rick Rubin's place.
Oh,
yeah. He'd
okay.
also had Chili Peppers working there before us. They'd written an album there. I don't think they recorded it there, but we certainly weren't recording there. We were just working on songs to be recorded later. But yeah, the whole house went up. It was a complete nightmare. We were lucky to get out of there alive. I mean, as I said, I jumped out of a 2-story up there, 2 floors up, out the bedroom that I was staying in.
And were you injured?
No, I was super lucky. I got my boots on and stuff, and I went to go to the door to the house to where the staircase was to go down, and I touched the door handle, and it was boiling hot, and I burnt my hand just grabbing the handle, so I knew not to open that door. And then I just went on automatic pilot, opened the window, and jumped. And I landed on my feet and rolled, and I had a bit of a backache a couple of days later, but I was super lucky. In fact, Genesis died. He jumped out of either the 2nd or 3rd floor, and this sounds hilarious, but it's actually true. On the roof that he jumped from, he slipped on a banana skin. Why a banana skin was on the roof, I have no idea. He slipped on a banana skin on the roof and slid and landed really badly on his arm.
Oh, my gosh.
Onto the ground, and he bust his arm in like either 9 or 11 places.
Wow.
He was in absolute agony. Got out. I don't know how he got out. Kevin actually wasn't staying there, but there were various friends that were around. There was Genesis' assistant that was the one who was screaming, knocking on the doors, telling us fire, fire, But yeah, that's what happened.
Thank God that wasn't more tragic. I mean, I think that could have been so much worse.
Yeah, nobody died. Yeah, but Jen was in hospital for a long time after that, and he had a blood condition anyway, so there was complications. But yeah, he busted his arm either in 9 or 12 places. It was either 9 or 11 places, as far as I remember. So he was banged up real bad in hospital for quite a time. And then there's a big old lawsuit about it and all the rest of it, which I don't really want to get into. But, and we lost all our gear. And, the Sweet FA thing, we were scrambling for places to record because the money had suddenly been taken away and there was no record company. So, yeah, great.
Wow.
But we got through it and we put it out, in the end, just from various friends helping us out in little home studios in Hollywood.
That's a hell of a story. And like I said, I think that's an album that probably doesn't get its due. I love that record.
You can never tell what's going to pick up, what isn't. I mean, I didn't know that Go was going to do what Go was going to do. I mean, that was number 1 in Germany for like 6 weeks. And I don't know where that lyric came from. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just said it. I just wrote it down. It was, amongst the different verses. And it just sort of one of those things that came out. But obviously, ja means yes in German. And they picked up on it because it was number 1 over there, and I think some of that has got to do with that lyric,
yep.
The ya chorus thing. It didn't mean anything to me as I was doing it. I don't know where that came from in my head, subconsciously what I was thinking there. No idea.
It's funny how sometimes the simplest things you do wind up being the most effective things you do.
The simplest things are always that case. I mean, when I think back at the most successful tracks in any band or solo thing that I've done, the ones that came the quickest, and usually that I mean by a day or possibly 2, are the quickest ones. Bella, a classic example, and So Alive. So Alive was written in 1 day, and mixed and produced and done with by day 2.
Really?
Quick. Bella, one day, the whole thing. Go, same thing, one day. Yeah, real quick. It's the best. It's weird how that is. I wish it would happen more often. But yeah, then you can labor on something for 3 months and nobody gives a shit. So yeah, I'm into spontaneity big time because of that. I try not to let the intellect get in the way and just have something that's pure. Not as soon as you start thinking about it, you screw it up. That's the case for me anyway. I can't really craft things for long. It's either quick or move on.
Yeah. Well,
and it's something actually at how Iggy Pop works. Is when Bowie was working with Iggy back with the Idiot and Lust for Life, it was like automatic writing, but verbally. He would just come out with 90% of those lyrics were right off the top of his head, just down on boom in front of the mic, which is the same as rapping if you think about it. That's where that comes from. I don't know how those guys do that. I admire that so much. I don't know where that comes from. That when people rap, I can't understand how they do that. It's incredible.
I've heard that about Iggy. I actually interviewed Clem Burke from Blondie, who was on an Iggy album. Same thing. That it was like one of those things where Iggy would just make stuff up on the spot, and it was like it worked. It's like it was this insane improvisational talent that the guy had. And
well, what it is with what's going on there is that he is not allowing the intellect to take over. I think the intellect does so much damage to, as far as the arts is concerned.
Yeah.
It's when it's pure, it's the subconscious coming forward, and the subconscious is so much more than the conscious anyway. So what's going on is he's channeling that, and that is so much bigger and better than it's so much different, let's just say, than the conscious mind, the subconscious. So if you can channel that, you've got the world at your feet as far as I'm concerned, because the unconscious knows everything. The subconscious knows everything in comparison with your conscious self. So that's being channeled. And when the intellect takes over, you get what I call arty-farty nonsense, and it's overcrafted, overthought about. And then you have things like prog rock. Let's forget about that.
So the new album is going to come out later this year.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be this year. We're going to finish it. It's going to be done. It's got to be done by the end of next month. We need some feedback, and then it's a case of promoting it and getting it out there. So we intend going on the road with it, because I know Paul for sure can't wait to play gigs. He loves playing live. There's the other ways to get it out there. Going to be the usual Facebook stuff and Instagram and all that. So after 2 months, I really hope that we're going to have it in the can in 2 months' time. Run it, just check all the mixes are right, get it mastered, and then start. I don't know, we might release an EP or one track a week or something like that. I've got to find out exactly the best way to put it out there and get some feedback.
I can't wait to hear it. Ashes and Diamonds is the name of it, right?
I can't wait to hear it either.
I bet. Hey,
it's in New York. It's in New York at the moment, being messed with, and then it'll be sent back to me, and then it'll be sent back to Paul, and we go, yeah, can you change this? Could you do that? Could you do this? And then it'll go back again, and then we'll get it back, and then Bruce will say something, and then it'll change again, and that's been going on for 18 months. So it's got to end by the last day of February. That's the deadlines that we've put on ourselves, and then hopefully it's going to be wonderful.
I'm sure it will be.
Fingers crossed.
Daniel, I appreciate the time today. It's a real pleasure to talk to you, and like I said, I've been a fan for a long, long time. So thank you very much for doing your first podcast with me. I'm actually very honored.
Well, I really appreciate the plug, so thank you so much as well.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye now. That's Daniel Ash. Ashes and Diamonds coming out later this year. I'll be posting some Spotify playlists of Daniel's entire career with Bauhaus and Tones on Tail and Love and Rockets and some of his solo stuff too. Check them out on Facebook. I'll be posting those later on. Let me know what you think. You can email me at bax@rock102.com. We'll see you next time on Baxy's Musical Podcast.